bathroom looking at you like, what?
Yeah. Yo, I was in.
Are you gonna use it?
I was in a bar. I was in a bar in Brooklyn one time, and the girls were using the urinals.
There you go. All right.
You can. If you have like that muscle control, you can get that piss to dart out. You know, like you can totally use the stand-up urinals because the toilets, you don't want to go there.
When we were talking tropes, I did not know we were going to take this right-hand turn. That's for sure.
Well, that is true horror and how Boston's just not used to the rest of the world and how aggressive it can be. I only had one moment on the Jersey Shore where I legit thought I was going to get raped, and to be clear, by women. I was getting pulled into a stall. And I'm not the best. Look, I'm not saying I'm over here being Denzel. That's not what I'm trying to point out. What I'm saying is women are just so aggressive and so fucking drunk and so ready for it. To Greg's point, like they're not the same breed that we're dealing up here in Boston, people. Like you ain't ready when you head down the 95 corridor. It is about to get fucking real because they're like that's some horror. I was legit scared. I'm like, holy shit, I'm about to get raped.
Wow.
This is insane.
With
They're
that,
kind of good looking, so I'm trying to figure out where I'm at with this. Like, I don't want it, but like,
yeah. I mean, now that we've gone to his fear, Josh.
Well, with that, I'm gonna speaking of baseball, fear, urinals, and a lot of other things that I didn't expect to. Let's kick it on over to the 3 of clubs here. I want to get his official 10 minutes of deconstruction here. Batting out of the 9 hole, so we can keep it tied to the baseball theme today.
I don't give a shit. The point being also, and this, I would be remiss not to point out and how true horror kicks in. They were using the N-word and they were white. So it was also some weird shit going on. I'm telling you, it was
touching on my point about rednecks.
A lot of stuff.
I'm gonna loop it, baby. I'm gonna loop it. I'm gonna bring it under the loop. I'm gonna fucking pull it. And then you got your bunny ears. Like, here we go. So tropes, I understand where we're trying to go and what point we're trying to make. And it's, to me, the exact same point when it comes to cliches, which are, we have to first remember what they are to even appreciate or not appreciate what they do and why they exist. They exist because, one, they work. Like, tropes are nothing more than someone's idea a long time ago. Same thing with a cliche. It was normally, when we look at the history of a lot of the films that we appreciate, we look back and we reanalyze, we break down, we dissect. Similar in certain literatures, hell, even in certain music, we break it down. There's a lot of times it ends up being, there's a problem that presents to the creative process, and then the solution tends to get to this idea that is, for a lot of ways, uncommon, unnoticed, and definitely unexpected. So then the success from this becomes, like anything else, replicated, because as we all pointed out multiple times and will continue to, Hollywood, our main medium of focus, or main industry that produces the medium of focus for us more often than not, Hollywood exists, or movie theaters and movie studios exist to make money. So it makes sense in a lot of different ways when a good idea happens that other people, especially as Josh pointed out, when they get lazy, just go right to this as a form of like carbon copying. This worked in this idea, in this situation, it produced X amount of success. Even if we know we can't get to 90% of the success this movie or this entity created from this great idea, we can get to 70%, which will still produce X amount of profit, and we'll just keep going. And unfortunately for the viewer, that we don't often catch up and understand what we're looking at, that can be replicated to a lot of degrees of success for a movie studio for them to not give a shit and keep doing it. There's a lot of times they'll just kick out a movie, mainly because they'll get a tax credit the way our tax system goes, but also because they know if they get a profit line over a certain amount, it doesn't matter. They're making money. So tropes happen because they work. Also, again, the success. they happen because we like them, or in fact love them. We wanted more. The consumer plays a role in what a trope is and how it exists, no different than a cliche. We keep coming back to it. We keep showing up and saying, yes, we like this. We can groan on the way out, but guess what? We're showing up the next time. We've talked about Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, all objectively bad series, all objectively series that have not been treated with respect. Yet every single time they come out with a new iteration, knowing full well of what the tropes are going to be, we show up in mass. No different for Aliens. I'm an Aliens fan. I've been heartbroken ever since 1986. Like, it is yet to actually happen. We can talk about other entities that don't necessarily include horror. I know we're all thinking of a multitude of series that just continue, mainly because they continue on tropes. And tropes are, in fact, again, things that we have liked and loved. And once again, another reason why they exist, they work. I need to repeat that. We cannot lose sight of that. And it's funny enough, if you look at it from a parallel to like video games, the often conversation in the video game community is, why do we continue to support big box companies that continue to just give us the same game with different faceplates, when we can support multitude of studios giving us a lot of different iterations of new ideas in games? That's the reason why we all started to play video games. It's no different. So when we have movie theater or movie tropes, horror movie tropes in the specific topic of what we're talking about, they exist because we like them and they work. Also, they exist because they're there everywhere. It's across the board in almost every single medium in which we are expressing a creative idea. One very specific example of this, but in a different sort of style from horror, is the quote unquote the hero story. Great breakdown of the understanding of the maturation of the protagonist. And why it's great is because when we look at a lot of what we've collectively, whether we look at it as a sense of, well, it's always been the Western point of view, it's always been the white male point of view, it's always been a Judeo-Christian point of view, however we want to look at it, for at least the last millennia, the hero story actually sort of fits in almost every single thing that we look at. So there's a reason why it's almost hardwired in our brains that tropes end up working, why we support them and why they continue, is because actually it's found in almost every single thing that we look at when it comes to the way we approach storytelling. And then the final point of what I would point of what I'm making when it comes to tropes and why they exist and will continue to exist, and why there's in a lot of ways not that bad. They tend to actually birth new tropes. That's one of the best things about tropes, and what that I think really it comes back to a point that I keep revisiting that Josh actually pointed out, which is we have to always break down, are we looking at just lazy filmmaking in total, with includes the script, the story that's being told, how it got executed and edited? Or are we just looking at an overabundance of tropes that actually fit and work, as he's pointed out and Greg's pointed out in a few different ways? But unfortunately, the execution was completely off. It was a matter of really bad filmmaking. There's a lot of different ways it tends to happen, but the cool thing is it creates new tropes. And one example is subversion. Well, a lot of times we weren't expected to be subverted in a certain way. We've actually mentioned one that I argue set the stage for modern horror movies, which is Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Up until that point, I would argue a lot of different ways we were expecting the hero or the end of the movie to be the end of the movie, that there's no more things to be scared about, that serotonin that Josh pointed out can start to kick in. We can soothe ourselves. We can convince ourselves, okay, that was rough, but it's over. Movies like that, and yes, I know someone's going to be like, well, an Alien. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And I'm not saying that Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was the first one. What I'm pointing out is because it came from basically a poppy type movie that no one was really taking serious. It sort of introduced an understanding of these sort of popcorn horror movies that didn't have to work too hard, can actually get to a point where they can work for that jump scare and actually really get you. So after that, you can argue a lot of movies sort of move towards that understanding, or at least that use of that trope. Like, hey, you got a shitty movie, it was a shitty idea, but hey, we're just gonna go with it anyway, and at least we'll have this last scare to get you. And more often than not, I hate to say it, when we look back at some of the movies that we've loved in the last 2 decades, it kind of comes back down to that. Like the movie sucked all the way through, but then that last little part scared you right at the end. Um, the other sort of trope is thinking that the good guy has to survive or make it all the way through. And there's movies like, I would argue, Jeepers Creepers, which is up at the top of Netflix rankings right now for a lot of different reasons. I think a lot of people end up watching it the same way I did, which is like, what's this bullshit? And you're watching it, and I think Justin Long's in, it's like, this can't be fucking good. And then like when Jeepers Creepers starts to show up and he starts doing his things, like, whoa, what the fuck? This dude's not fucking around. So he gets to the point, to Josh's point and anyone's point about loving movies, you actually have to care about the characters. Me and Greg talk about it all the time. He gets to the point where like you're thinking, all right, well, these guys have to survive. They have to make it through. I'm not going to spoil it, but that's not the case. Or Cabin in the Woods, same thing. You're watching it, but there's a sense that we convinced ourselves, I would argue collectively, that somewhere towards the end, we will get to the light at the end of the tunnel. There will be safety. There will be the end of this voyage that has scared the shit out of us. And then you find out, or because you convince yourself someone has to live, someone has to survive, someone has to blah, blah, blah. And then you get to a movie like Cabin in the Woods, it's like, actually, no, we're going to point out that everyone's about to fucking die. Everyone. People in this movie, people outside this movie, you watch it, everyone's dying. This is how it's ending. It's like, okay, that's kind of fucked up. So again, tropes happen for a reason. They're not always necessarily bad. It just more often than not comes back to shitty filmmaking.
Tropes are dope, is I think what we're getting at.
I am not saying that. I want to make that clear. I will not have my name attached to that stain, and sadly, that could end up being our best-selling T-shirt. So
that's it. Well, Greg, get on that hashtag. Tropes are dopes. Trope is dope. Tropes are dope. There you go.
You sold me, man. We're gonna put some neon color into that. Maybe go back to that slap.
Slap bracelet we were talking about earlier. That's right.
I'm pretty sure playing parents in the 90s, like, oh great, you want a slap bracelet. That's just
fantastic.
Right.
We got that. I definitely think we have the name of the episode. So I'm gonna take credit for I'm gonna take a credit for that one. Stepping up on
it's growing on me.
There you go. It's the rule of threes. You say, first you didn't like it, but now I've said it 3 times, and tropes are dope. That's it. And there it is.
There, you said 2 times there.
I mean, I don't think that, it's like good junk food. You know what I mean? Like when you're stuffing that, KFC or McDonald's down your throat, and, you can just, feel your heart cussing you out. You're like, you know what? This shit's good right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. I mean, to say that you would hate all trope, because like I said, okay, all right, no, that's a lie. I'm legit done with rednecks. But I'm not totally done with zombies. Like I'd be open to a good zombie movie or a different take on a zombie movie. But yeah, I think that's true. Like everybody loves the comfort of the familiar. Like you can never say, and Lord knows that I'm not going to say that our species loves nothing more than being challenged. Like I make that statement like ever. No, like the familiar is better. The brain is like, any muscle in the body. It gets tired and it doesn't want to do things anymore. And there's nothing better than a good trope.
Yeah, I mean, that's how stereotypes exist. It's your brain refusing to actually take the long path, so it takes the short route. That's literally the brain transaction of what a stereotype is.
Right.
The funny part is like going to, I totally forgot what I want to say about zombies, but I'm